My name is Ali. I'm a student of Çankırı Karatekin University. For my lesson of international relations, today I'm going to talk about the international system, international relations of 17th century. When we say international relations, we know that the starting point of international relations is the Westphalia peace treaty. Today, especially, I'm going to talk about this peace treaty. 17th century is a period of many important issues. For today's international relations, in this period, feudal states were replaced by sovereign states. The authority of the church decreased. Europe started to be ruled by sovereign centralized nation states, not by Vatican affiliated kings. According to the scientific world, the birth of modern international relations was with the Peace of Westphalia, signed in 1648. The Peace of Westphalia is the treaty that closed a calamitous area in which nearly 8 million people died. And this peace treaty brought peace to the Holy Roman Empire. Catholic and Protestant countries, which had been at war for a long period, ended the 80 years war with this peace. This peace has a very important place for both Europe and the world because the foundations of modern international relations and international laws were laid under this treaty. With this peace treaty, the Europe was born that recognize each other's sovereignty and tries to resolve conflicts with diplomacy, not war. Of course, there have been various changes after this peace treaty, for example, World Wars, Napoleon Wars, but none of them were able to abolish these pieces contributions to the modern international relations, international peace, international laws. The Peace of Westphalia was signed in 1648 between the Holy Roman Empire, other German princes, representative of Spain, France, Sweden, and the Dutch Republic. If we look at the contributions of peace to the modern history, the first one, it is the starting point of international relations. According to the Hadley Bow of the English School of International Relations, something which is international must have three defining characteristics. The first one, there must be more than one, a multiple sovereign nation. And the second one, according to the system, these nation states should be in regular communication and interaction. And the third one, these sovereign states must adhere to the norms and rules that bind them together. With the Peace of Westphalia, international relations began among the European states where such characteristics couldn't be mentioned before. And from that on, Europe will have been consist of modern independent states that act according to their own laws, follow their own economic and political interests, take the side they want, form and break alliances. Today's interstate system was established thanks to this Westphalia Peace Treaty. Feudal structures existed in Europe until the Treaty of Westphalia. But after the treaty, principalities ruled by kings, princes, and nobles under the authority of the Roman Catholic Pope would now be replaced by sovereign states. Well, why was a treaty like Westphalia signed in Europe? Actually, in fact, it had to be signed because people were tired because of the wars, and nobody, any country wouldn't give an end to these conflicts, and people were tired of the church's unfair rules, and increasing Protestants. Europe was divided into two sides: Pope supporters and non-supporters. There were also power interests between countries. These two dynamics will start the 30 Years' War in Europe, which lasted 30 years. Increasing Protestant uprisings in Bohemia in 1680 grew with the support of Evangelical Union, but the uprisings were pacified with the support of Pope. Later, Denmark and Sweden joined these uprisings. With the participation of France in the Protestant revolts, almost all of the states in Europe joined the war. There was two sides. One of them was France and Sweden, and the other one was Spain and Austrian Habsburg. The war between Protestants and Catholics, which lasted 30 years, was a really tough war for both sides. Actually, it is said that this war was a kind of sectarian Protestant Catholic war, but actually the states fighting actually were thinking about their interests, economic interests. They wanted to extend their boundaries. According to the Stephen Lee, this war is a conflict of interest in the name of sect. Countries were fighting for their own interests by using religion as a tool. But according to the Kissinger, these wars were an opportunity for the emergence of nation-states in Europe. At the end of the day, each state will defend its own interests through mutual recognition of sovereignty. And at the end of the war, before the end of the war, both sides' representatives met in Münster and Osnabrück, and the treaties were made in these cities. But for the first time, the Catholic Church, which played a role of mediator, didn't take place in the treaties. In this time, the parties recognized each other's sovereignty and were signed within the framework of the principle of equality. The Treaty of Westphalia gave each prince the right to choose the religion he wanted in his own land. After this treaty, wars based on religion in Europe decreased significantly. One of the Westphalia's greatest outputs enabled not only France and Sweden, but also some 300 small states to have political authority in their own territory. In this way, the foundations of the modern nation-state structure was established. If we collect the biggest outputs of Westphalia under two headings, the first one is that with the given sovereignty, all regional states, regardless of their size, start to be considered legally equal and independent. Each state will have a special authority within its borders. The second one, no state will interfere in the internal affairs of the other. Anyone who wishes can establish a union, an ally with any other state. When we look at these two items, we see that the foundations of modern nation-state have been laid. The foundations of international relations and laws, which will continue until today, were laid. Although some articles of this treaty were damaged in later periods with the wars, for example, Napoleon Wars, World Wars, it is certain that there are articles that shed light on the present. Westphalia has set a precedent for future peace treaties between countries in Europe. Some of these are Spanish succession and Austrian succession. In these treaties, unsolved problems that had previously been left unfinished in Westphalia were resolved. If we take a look at the most important features of Westphalia, now all stakeholders, big and small, were included in the treaty. This system was created by those involved in the system. The common rules and norms were being established. The foundations were laid on the independence, freedom, and sovereignty of the states. However, there is a point brought by this agreement that should be noted. From now on, each state would follow its own interests and rights. Everything had begun to be resolved through diplomatic means. If diplomacy was not successful, this situation would be a danger for the state. Previously, the church was acting as a mediator, but now each state will create its own policy. With the Westphalian system, the balance of power between the countries was also ensured, so much so that every state has to make an effort not to be left behind by another state. When we look at the post-Westphalian Europe, although there were some conflicts, for example, Napoleon Wars, World Wars, that would damage the sovereign state and nation-state structure created by Westphalia, the Westphalia system always prevailed, always won. Despite some confusions in the international system, Westphalia's principles of sovereign state, equality, and non-interference in internal affairs have been preserved by cooperation between the states. The establishment of the United Nations, protection of a country's border against illegal force are always inheritance of this treaty. Thank you for listening.